Hello and welcome to Sophia Designs. Today's video I've been working on a request from quite a few of the subscribers of the channel. They've asked me to recycle some CDs or DVDs and they were looking for some ideas on what they could do with some old CDs and DVDs. So I went away and had a little think. I did see that some other people had just cut up CDs and placed them in resin, cut shapes out and then placed them in resin, but I wanted to bring you something a little bit different. So what I've come up with is this texture idea. So as you can see, the way the light reflects off those CDs, well, these were actually DVDs. I had a whole heap of DVDs that were never going to get used, so I decided I would cut those up. Having never cut anything like that up before, I wasn't entirely sure how easy or hard it was going to be or what the process was, so I did actually Google what some other people had done, and they warmed the CDs up first before cutting. So without further ado, let's get into how we create something similar to this. So okay, first thing I did was I boiled some water in the kettle and poured it into a bowl large enough to hold quite a few CDs. Now they did take a little bit of time to cut, so I probably didn't need to stick as many CDs in at the same time because I did have to go back later and add some more hot water because they took a little bit longer than anticipated. So probably would have been an idea to maybe just add 6 to the water, because that was enough time to do this before the water became too cool. So obviously I'm just using a pair of scissors to help submerge these CDs, but as you can see I've actually put quite a few in here, so I didn't need to do as many as that. So I'm just going to leave these for 10 minutes and then come back and start removing from the water. So as you can see, I'm just using some tongs to make sure I don't burn my fingers. And it was proving to be a bit more difficult than I thought. So I was able to eventually pick some out, as you can see. So what I've got to do now is I've got to get between the two plastic layers. So just using the edge of a knife, I was able to just prise into there. Now it wasn't too hard to separate, but you do need to be careful, obviously, using a knife to separate those because you might slip and cut your fingers, so just a safety warning there. So all I'm doing here is I'm actually cutting the outside edge so that I can then remove the foil from the inside. It just makes it a little bit easier. I wasn't sure if the foil was actually going to stay attached, but as I started cutting them up, I started realizing that the foil was actually coming away, so I decided to remove the foil and then save the foil for another project. So as you can see, I'm just cutting this up with scissors and I'm just cutting them into triangles. I'm not worrying too much about the size or how big the triangles are, or even if there's a nice point on them. I'm just cutting shapes. Now you can, because it is quite easy to cut, you can actually cut other shapes as well. So you could mark out on the CD or DVD the shape that you want to do and then cut those out. Now it was at this point that I realised that the foil was just going to come away and that there was no way that I could leave that on there because that would just come off if I left it as is on the resin piece. So I then went through and removed all of these from the disc later on I'll actually go and remove the foil first before cutting up, so I'll remove it in quicker sheets, at larger sheets, which makes it which speeds up the process a little bit. Now if you have difficulty using scissors to cut these up, someone had recommended that you can use tile snips or tin snips or whatever instead to cut them up. They're much easier to use than scissors and is quite good for those people with suffering with arthritis and having difficulty using regular scissors. So that's a handy tip that I thought I would share with everyone. So as you can see, I'm peeling off the silver foil before moving on to cutting out the shapes. Now note I'm also cutting away the centre of the disc as well, so because I don't need that at this moment, but I will keep hold of that because I may well use it on another project. And here's what I'm doing with the foil pieces. I'm just using some scissors to just cut this into smaller pieces, which I will use in another resin piece. So there's going to be a resin tutorial coming with what I do with these. I'm not sure what I'm going to do yet, but they will get used. So this is good that I'm able to use multiple parts of the DVD for different projects, which I think is a really good way to recycle the old CDs and DVDs. So watch out for that one coming soon. So next I'm using a board from Kmart. I use these boards quite a bit if I'm experimenting with pieces. So if I'm not sure if it's going to turn out, because these boards are really inexpensive, it means I'm not wasting too much, plus they're not too big, so I'm not using a lot of resin or a lot of any of the other materials. So the white stuff that you see me pasting here is multi-purpose filler. Now you can use a wall filler, tile grout, texture paste, gel medium, anything at all that you can get your hands on that you can glue the pieces onto the board and they are going to stay in place. Now I like the multi-purpose filler because it doesn't shrink, so I have no issues with it coming away from the board. It sticks to the board quite well, so, and it doesn't crack or anything either, so I find that to be quite handy. So now that I have the layout that I want, it's now time to start inserting the pieces into the filler. Now I'm starting at the back end and I'm going to build the layers on top as we move forward. Now at the time I wasn't sure whether I should have coloured the filler with a black pigment to just give it more of a charcoal colour, because I wasn't sure if I was going to like the white showing through, but when I poured the resin on the top I was actually pleasantly surprised with how well it turned out. So I didn't need to tint this, but that could be an option if you are unsure. You can actually mix it with some pigment, your black pigment or whatever colour you want to mix it with, and then before placing it on your board. So I'm just going to go through here and just add these, moving around the outside from one side to the other, and then just moving slowly up the piece and just placing them where I think it looks best. And don't worry if you do miss some areas out, because you can go back and add some more in between later on. So if you feel that some of the white of the filler needs covering a bit more, you can actually add more into that area. So as you can see, it does actually push the filler forward a little bit, but that's fine because that gives it plenty for the pieces to bind to. So just keep moving forward and just adding those as you go. I actually found this to be quite therapeutic, and I was quite happy in the background listening to some music while I put these in, and my daughter actually said to me, she said, that looks very, very satisfying to do, and I said it is. Surprisingly enough, it's quite gratifying to see this developing, especially when you're sitting there and you can see the reflections in the DVDs. It's actually, they look very attractive when you're working on it, and you can see that taking shape. Now obviously in the video you can't see that so much here, but when you've got it in front of you, it is quite nice to see the texture and this taking shape. I'm not sure how many DVDs this took to do. I'm guessing around about 10 that this took. Yeah, I didn't think to count how many I used. I do still have some pieces left that I can perhaps use on the next project, but yeah, and also you can add as little or as many as you want. You can add more if you feel it needs more. Like I say, if you want to cover some of the white areas with a few more, just to make sure that you don't have any of that on show. And I'll be honest, after I'd done this and it was curing, I was disappointed initially, thinking that, you know, I'd made a mistake in leaving it white. But I thought, well, it's too late now, I'll just have to go with it and see what happens. So then I just left this overnight to dry, and just checking in the morning that the pieces were well and truly stuck and they weren't moving, which I was really pleased with because I wasn't sure how that was going to turn out. So here I've mixed some really dark purple with my resin, and what I'm doing here now is I'm pouring it on the top, knowing that the resin is going to run down off the DVDs and into the white area. So I wasn't sure how much resin to mix at this point, because my usual amount that I would put together for a board this size is about 200 ml. However, because this will have run down into the cracks of the white, that I needed to mix up another little batch just to fill up the board. And all I'm doing here is I'm just moving this round to get some of the purple to cover the white and make sure that that's well and truly covered. And like I said, I've just mixed up a little bit more to make sure I've got enough to cover the board. And using a heat gun, I'm just going to zap those bubbles to get rid of those. So the other colours I'm using for this is a gold spray paint mixed in with the resin. So I've just drizzled that over the top to just add a little bit of interest. Now after I poured this gold on, I was undecided whether to add some white. So I could have left it as it was and just had the gold and the purple, because it was actually looking quite nice with the darker purple against the lighter purple. Now it doesn't look light there, but it is, with the reflections and things you get on that, you do get a nice contrast. And I decided to add the white, but after I added the white I felt that it was a bit too much, and so I tried to mix that in a little bit more so that I got more of the purple colour coming through. And so it started looking a bit messy, and that's not how I would normally like things to look. It was starting to look a little bit overdone, which if anybody's used resin before, you know, that's sometimes we can just work things just a little bit too much, and I think that that's what was going on here. So I tried to remedy it by adding some more purple and tried to fix it a bit. But yeah, I mean, with hindsight, I would either just use the gold and the purple or just use the white and the purple. So if I do another one, that's what I'll do. So to help with the movement, I also used a little bit of mineral turpentine on the top, and that helped break those colours up a little bit. And I'm also adding a little bit more gold just to add a little bit more interest into the piece. But like I say, I think I overworked this one a little bit too much. As always, thank you for watching. If you'd like to see what I have in store for the rest of the CD components, or any new ideas that I have coming up, then please subscribe to my channel. So until next time, bye for now.